Alright guys, TacticalRab here and today I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far with a sizable break now until Major 2 qualifiers get underway. Big questions have been raised as to which teams are going to look to make roster changes over the next couple of weeks. Multiple potential candidate teams here, especially given the huge gap between the best teams in the league and the worst teams at the present time. But also, Doug Censor Martin deciding to hang up the sticks it seems once and for all. Load to dive into today. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Firstly, this. You guys might remember Joanna Fairies, who was briefly the commissioner of the CDL in the very early days. She then left, did some other things. She's now actually made a Twitter account, so she didn't have one when she was working on the Call of Duty League stuff, which is maybe a good idea, to be honest, given what was going down at the time. So she is now the new president of Blizzard from now on out. We know full well there's lots of restructuring going down with the acquisition from Microsoft that's been going down at the moment, which is affecting all areas of the business and will continue to in the near future. So, you know, look, Joanna Fairies had kind of, well, mixed reputation, I would say, when she was working on the Call of Duty League stuff, but actually Adam Apicella and, well, others in the reply say that this is a pretty good move, as he says, you know, she's thoughtful, empathetic, master diplomat, she'll do a great job, good call, Microsoft. So, like, if Adam App says it's a good move, then I think I'm inclined to believe it's probably a good move. But yesterday, this was the big story, really. Doug Censor Martin calling it a day from competitive CoD. Now, I already made a video on Doug retiring, probably like 5 years ago when he retired the first time, but like then he made the return in the CDL era with his intention to get back into the league, to win the world championship, to help to bring up so many great younger players alongside him, as he has very successfully done on the Boston Breach Academy for the last couple of years. But, you know, this season hasn't been so great to start with for the Academy roster. They didn't really have a great placing it there. You know, this past weekend's their major challenges event, which coincided with it, they, you know, fell short relatively early on. And, you know, it seems Doug has come to the realization that given where he is in his life at the moment, the dreams and goals that he's kind of set for himself are, you know, unlikely to be attained. And therefore he's going to, you know, look to focus on other things, right? He's got this world pull-out record that he's going for in a few months' time, and balancing that with the Call of Duty stuff is, you know, not feasible. And like, I just thought Doug, he gets a lot of flack over his career for some of the things that he said and some of the things that he's done, but I don't think there's anybody that's ever been quite like Doug in the CoD scene. He's also one of the real OGs as well. Like, he's been around for well over a decade now. His prime as a player was probably about a decade ago. We're talking like, you know, Advanced Warfare Doug in 2014, 2015, stuff like that. We'll have a look at some of his results here in a second. But just the mentality that he brought into play, the passion, the, you know, one of the most hardworking guys ever, but also what he's achieved even inside and outside of Call of Duty. There's very few individuals, with the exception of maybe Scump and Nades, that have really transcended competitive CoD in the way that Doug has done, right? I mean, the whole Yannick Garcia thing, but also just what he achieved with FaZe in general, and then still having a lot of impact on the competitive Call of Duty scene in just the most recent years, even though he hasn't been maybe the player that he was back in the day. And as Nadeshot says, congrats on an incredible career. And, you know, I think Doug absolutely has a far more decorated career than the vast majority of pro players could really wish for. We'll have a look at some of the numbers here in a second from back in the day, but also, as I say, what he's achieved outside of the game. You know, lots of players should really use your mentality as a blueprint to find success. I thought that was a nice way to put it there from Nadeshot, and lots of other similar replies as well. But yeah, I thought it was a really sad day, right? Because Doug competing has kind of been a staple of the scene for the last several years, and Doug stepping away just feels kind of strange, right? Some would say, okay, sure, maybe it was somewhat overdue, but I think from Doug's point of view, like, you know, he's done very well over the last couple of years, given what he's been trying to achieve, and helped loads of younger guys that he's played with on the academy get their spots in the CDL. But of course, you know, the realization was it's at this point it's not going to be happening for him again, unlikely. So yeah, this is Doug's career card. 36 pro tournaments he played, largely on teams like, you know, Quantic, Leverage, Strictly Business, and of course FaZe themselves back in the day. You know, series win-loss looks like this: 5 appearances in finals, 4 tournament victories, so, you know, more trophies than a lot of the current crop of players that are considered to be very good have to the present day. You know, like, he did have the whole he's never lost a finals thing for some time, and there was some caveats to the finals that he lost that he talked about at the time, but yeah, he did technically lose 1 finals, depending on the way you look at it, but still, you know, 80% win rate in finals is pretty impressive. 4th at champs, career prize money, and you know, just a career that I think many pro players would be very proud of looking back on. There's also this that's worthy of mention, because Doug won the national championship in 2011 as we'll see here in a second. And that was effectively the precursor to the World Championship. Now, it wasn't called the World Championship, and it was a national championship, but effectively, the team that won that event was pretty much the best team in the world at that time. There's also questions about CoD XP, which happened on Modern Warfare 3, whether that should be a World Championship, because OpTic won that, but it was before the game even released or something. I don't think that counts personally. But the National Championships from 2008 to 2011, in Aikes' opinion, and probably in Doug's opinion as well, should count as a ring. He actually mentioned this before, that, for example, these guys that won the National Championships from 2008 to 2011, which was Doug in 2011 with Mutation, Virus, and Vengeance, should be considered, a ring winner, because that was effectively the precursor to the World Championship. Now, it's not quite the same. They never got the World Championship rings that the guys get for winning it in the CDL nowadays, but nonetheless, I thought it was interesting to note that depending on the way you look at it, Doug could be considered a world champion in some regard and have his ring already. So, but just joins such a crop of players. Like, you look at this graphic right here that Subliners put together, and there's some people that maybe they missed out. I'm pretty sure Zero said, oh, come on, you should have put me on this or something. But yeah, loads of legendary players and faces that we have, since Step Away over the last several years. And Doug was part of this crop of players. It feels like it's only a matter of time until, hopefully Clay can continue for longer. Like, I don't want to see Clay step away after the end of this season, and I don't think he necessarily will based on the way that he's presently playing, but we've got guys like Attach and Clay and Slasher and Accuracy, a few others that were still around, let's say 8-9 years ago, but Doug was certainly one of them. So wishing Doug the best going forward, of course, but I do think he's got a bright future whatever he does. Just his mentality will apply so well to whatever he decides to do, but he's also been a great talent scout in the league. I think there's no denying that the players that Doug has picked up, Beans, Ghosty, Snoopy, among plenty of others over the last couple of seasons that have gone on to do great things. If Doug wanted to, he could possibly, become a general manager somewhere, or at least be like a talent scout somewhere. So I guess we'll see what the future holds, but just knowing the way Doug goes about things, it'll be successful whatever he decides to do in his next adventure. We've got to talk though about the future of Rostermania here, because it is approximately 17-18 days until the next matchup starts again. I will say it's pretty tough in Miami. They play Toronto first game back, and then they play FaZe second game back. But there's 2 weekends off now, and then it's like after these 2 weekends, then things go into play once again. Now, the game is going to change significantly from what the pros have been playing recently. The new patch update is now in place. The pros will be practicing on it. That could give some teams a bit of a fresh start in terms of how they've been performing this season, and it is quite a substantial change, but more than likely the best teams will still remain the best teams going forward, but some teams might try and change things around. The reality is, though, that sure, there might be a new patch update, but some of these teams will need a roster change if they want to be competitive at all. It was super evident this past weekend that some teams are way better than other teams. Toronto are clear of FaZe, FaZe are clear of OpTic, we'll discuss that later on today, and OpTic are kind of clear of everybody else. Like, there are serious levels to this game at the moment, and if you want to move up the order, even Rocker, they didn't make a change from the start of the season. They made some progress just by sticking together, but frankly, that's not going to be enough to compete with the dominant forces in the CDL at the moment. So the teams that really have ambition, that are down at the lower half of the league right now, in the standings at least, will surely need to consider some sort of move. We saw what happened with Ravens. They, got rid of GodRx. They brought in Fellow, a faster paced AR, helps with Clay. Of course, Real's also gone, Teachers come in, and maybe there was a bit of a honeymoon phase going on there, but still, top 8 at this event. It probably should have been better. They could well have beaten Surge. I think they'll definitely think they should have beaten Surge in that game for Invasion Hardpoint in the respawn modes, but, they knocked out the New York Subliners. They played great CoD. They took 2 maps off FaZe online very recently, which is impressive in its own right. So teams making roster changes and making improvements will probably show other teams that a similar path forward for them is maybe necessary. This is the current set of standings. Ravens are quite likely to stick it out. Subliners, OpTic, FaZe, Ultra are likely to stick it out. Rocker probably will. I do think there should be some consideration for whether, because Awakening, while he did turn up somewhat on LAN, he has still been questionable so far, and in the series they did eventually lose to go out of the tournament to OpTic, Awakening out a bit of a stinker in the respawns again. So there is question there that if you could maybe upgrade in that position, it's worth contemplating, especially because after this performance, Rocker will be a pretty attractive destination based on how well they're doing at the moment, right? But I just don't expect them to replicate that performance anytime soon. So I don't think Rocker should necessarily look at their top 4 and think, okay, yeah, we're fine, we're going to start competing with Ultra and FaZe soon. That seems relatively unlikely. Subliners, I'm sure, will stick it out because, you know, they just had a massively off weekend, and I do expect them to make a bit of a comeback, but I still do have some questions about that team. Gorillas will probably stay as they are. They got a good top 6. Ravens, I imagine they'll stay as they are, but some other teams are definitely in the conversation. I will mention Miami just because, like, if they're going to sign anyone, it's got to be a Spanish player. They could potentially swap between their bench and the starting roster because ErikBooM was in the starting team for Heretics at the start of the season. They benched him for JurNii, but JurNii had a really tough weekend here on land, so it's possible that ErikBooM could come back into the starting team. And Ace says, of course, who maybe has been speaking to some players on the Sunday night to see exactly what's going on, saying that CDL Rostermania has got me like I can't say anything. So basically confirming from Ace's point of view, at least as far as he is aware, that changes are happening. He just doesn't necessarily want to speak on what those might potentially be yet. So it seems inevitable that some teams will make moves. But I will say it's surprising to me that Boston, well, Zed basically came out on stream and said that as far as he is aware, he's not making any roster changes. They're not making any roster moves, which I think is somewhat surprising to me. Boston last year were making big changes, especially because if I had to make one change on Boston, I would keep Snoopy, I would definitely keep Slasher, I think I would keep Priestahh for now for sure. Capsidal and Snoopy, I think, are too similar in terms of players. They're both really fast-paced SMGs. Getting them to both work at the same time, I think it's a tall order. They have just seen Kremp absolutely fry in the Challengers bracket this weekend for FaZe Black and win the entire thing. And Kremp was on Boston before, potential high-slaying SMG with already some league experience. I think that just makes a lot of sense, right? Kremp is quite possibly the most attractive option for all of these teams currently in the Challenger side. So if Boston turn down that opportunity, I don't know if they will regret it, but we'll see what happens. But the thing is, Boston will be, of the teams that could make moves, one of the most attractive. But then if you're Surge, if you're, you know, Thieves, maybe even if you're Legion or something like that, you then get on the phone to some of these guys on the FaZe Black team and start to have conversations, because if Boston aren't going to make a move, which are no doubt one of the most attractive teams to potentially join, then those other teams might have to consider something. Thieves, for sure. I would be surprised if they don't make a change as it presently stands. Their hardpoint was woeful. Sure, in scrims it was fine, apparently. They were winning the majority of their hardpoint in scrims. But doesn't matter, does it, if you go to the tournament to get top 12? And they were an organisation that isn't happy being right at the bottom of the standings. Nobody is, but like, you know, where they were for the last couple of years, winning the World Championship in 2022, they want to be up there with the top dogs, and they're absolutely nowhere near at the moment. Ghosty has done enough to say that he ain't going anywhere. But all of the other guys, I think, could be in some degree of question. Cammy has had pretty much one good series, maybe 2 good series so far this season. So it seems, you know, especially you look at these top guys, the likes of Bracken's high slaying AR potential, there's an option there for these guys to go into one of those rosters. And even Seattle Surge, I think, is definitely worth some consideration, because we mentioned it before. At the start of the season, it never made that much sense to me, aBeZy, Arcetes, and Illy. They might well decide to, you know, stick it out because they're boys or whatever, but let's be honest here, Arcetes potentially to a different, you know, well, to the bench or whatever you want to say, and then another SMG to come in alongside, you know, Hook maybe, like a Kremp and Hook SMG duo. I don't know, but if Boston are going to say, no, we're not making any moves, I think it does open the door for teams to sign aBeZy, Kremp, and some of these guys at the top of the Challenger side, which is pretty much undisputedly right now those guys on the FaZe Black team. So very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.